Today we're going to start with the mayor's library. Certainly, something of great magnitude was coming toward 33 Himmel Street, to which Liesel was currently oblivious. To distort an overused human expression, the girl had more immediate fish to fry. She had stolen a book. Someone had seen her. The book thief reacted appropriately. Every minute, every hour, there was worry, or more to the point, paranoia. Criminal activity will do that to a person, especially a child. They envision a prolific assortment of caught outedness. Some examples: people jumping out of alleys, school teachers suddenly be aware of every sin you've ever committed, police showing up at the door each time a leaf turns or a distant gate slams shut. For Liesel, the paranoia itself became the punishment, as did the dread of delivering some washing to the mayor's house. It was no mistake, as I'm sure you can imagine, that when the time came, Liesel conveniently overlooked the house on Grandstrasse. She delivered to the authoritic Helena Schmidt and picked up at the cat loving Weingartner residence, but she ignored the house belonging to Burgermeister Heinz Hermann and his wife Ilse. Another quick translation: Burgermeister equal mayor. On the first occasion, she stated that she simply forgot about the place, a poor excuse if I've ever heard one, as the house straddled the hill overlooking the town, and it was unforgettable. When she went back and still returned empty handed, she lied that there was no one home. No one home? Mamma was skeptical. Skepticism gave her an itch for the wooden spoon. She waved it at Liesel and said, "Get back over there now, and if you don't come back home with the washing, don't come home at all." Really? That was Rudy's response when Liesel told him what Mamma said. "Do you want to run away together?" "We'll starve. I'm starving anyway." They laughed. "No," she said, "I have to do it." They walked the town as they usually did when Rudy came along. He always tried to be a gentleman and carry the bag, but each time Liesel refused. Only she had the threat of a watchkin loitering over her head, and therefore only she could be relied upon to carry the bag correctly. Anyone else was more likely to manhandle it, twist it, or mistreat it in even the most minimal way, and it was not worth the risk. Also, it was likely that if she allowed Rudy to carry it for her, he would expect a kiss for his services, and that was not an option. Besides, she was accustomed to its burden. She would swap the bag from shoulder to shoulder, relieving each side every 100 steps or so. Liesel walked on the left, Rudy the right. Rudy talked most of the time about the last soccer match on Himmel Street, working in his father's shop, or whatever else came to mind. Liesel tried to listen but failed. What she heard was the dread, chiming through her ears, growing louder the closer they stepped toward Grand Strasse. "What are you doing? Isn't this it?" Liesel nodded that Rudy was right, for she had tried to walk past the mayor's house to buy some time. "Well, go on." The boy hurried her. Mulking was darkening. The cold was climbing out of the ground. "Move it, Smush." He remained at the gate. After the path, there were 8 steps up to the main entrance of the house, and the great door was like a monster. Liesel frowned at the brass knocker. "What are you waiting for?" Rudy called out. Liesel turned and faced the street. Was there any way at all, for her to evade this? Was there another story, or let's face it, another lie that she'd overlooked? "We don't have all day." Rudy's distant voice again. "What the hell are you waiting for?" "Will you shut up, Steiner?" It was a shout delivered as a whisper. "What?" "I said shut up, you stupid circle." With that, she faced the door again, lifted the brass knuckle, and tapped it 3 times, slowly. Feet approached from the other side. At first, she didn't look at the woman, but focused on the washing bag in her hand. She examined the drawstring as she passed it over. Money was handed out to her, and then nothing. The mayor's wife, who never spoke, simply stood in her bathrobe, her soft, fluffy hair tied back into a short tail. A draft made itself known, something like the imagined breath of a corpse. Still, there were no words, and when Liesel found the courage to face her, the woman wore an expression not of reproach, but utter distance. For a moment, she looked over Liesel's shoulder at the boy, then nodded and stepped back, closing the door. For quite a while, Liesel remained, facing the blanket of upright wood. Hey, schmotch! No response. Liesel! Liesel reversed, cautiously. She took the first few steps backwards, calculating. Perhaps the woman hadn't seen her steal the book after all. It had been getting dark. Perhaps it was one of those times when a person appears to be looking directly at you, when in fact they're contentedly watching something else or simply daydreaming. Whatever the answer, Liesel didn't attempt any further analysis. She'd gotten away with it, and that was enough. She turned and handled the remainder of the steps normally, taking the last three all at once. Let's go, Sarkle! She even allowed herself to laugh. 11-year-old paranoia was powerful. 11-year-old relief was euphoric. A little something to dampen the euphoria. She had not gotten away with nothing. The mayor's wife had seen her all right. She was just waiting for the right moment. A few weeks passed. Soccer on Himmel Street, reading the shoulder shrug between 2 and 3 o'clock each morning, post nightmare, or during the afternoon in the basement. Another benign visit to the mayor's house. All was lovely until when Liesel next visited, minus Rudy, the opportunity presented itself. It was a pickup day. The mayor's wife opened the door, and she was not holding the bag like she normally would. Instead, she stepped aside and motioned with her chalky hand and wrist for the girl to enter. I, I'm just here for the washing. Liesel's blood had dried inside of her. It crumbled. She almost broke into pieces on the steps. The woman said her first word to her then. She reached out, cold finger, and said, Bert! Wait. When she was sure the girl had steadied, she turned and walked hastily back inside. Thank God! Liesel exhaled. She's getting it being the washing. What the woman returned with, however, was nothing of the sort. When she came and stood with an impossibly frail steadfastness, she was holding a tower of books against her stomach, from her navel to the beginning of her breast. She looked so vulnerable in the monstrous doorway. Long, light eyelashes, and just the slightest twinge of expression. A suggestion. Come and see, it said. She's going to torture me, Liesel decided. She's going to take me inside, light the fireplace, and throw me in, books and all. Or she'll lock me in the basement without any food. For some reason, though, most likely the lure of the books, she found herself walking in. The squeaking of her shoes on the wooden floorboards made her cringe, and when she hit a sore spot, inducing the wood to groan, she almost stopped. The mayor's wife was not deterred. She only looked briefly behind and continued on to a chestnut colored door. Now her face asked a question. Are you ready? Liesel craned her neck a little, as if she might see over the door that stood in her way. Clearly, that was the cue to open it. Jesus, Mary. She said it out loud. The words distributed into a room that was full of cold air and books. Books everywhere. Each wall was armed with overcrowded yet immaculate shelving. It was barely possible to see the paintwork. There were all different styles and sizes of lettering on the spines of the black, the red, the gray, the every colored books. It was one of the most beautiful things Liesel Miminger had ever seen. With wonder, she smiled. That such a room existed. But when she tried to wipe the smile away with her forearm, she realized instantly that it was a pointless exercise. She could feel the eyes of the woman traveling her body, and when she looked at her, they had rested on her face. There was more silence than she ever thought possible. It extended like an elastic, dying to break. The girl broke it. Can I? The two words stood among acres and acres of vacant, wooden floored land. The books were miles away. The woman nodded. Yes, you can. Steadily the room shrank, till the book thief could touch the shelves within a few small steps. She ran the back of her hand along the first shelf, listening to the shuffle of her fingernails gliding across the spinal cord of each book. It sounded like an instrument, or the notes of running feet. She used both hands. She raced them, one shelf against the other, and she laughed. Her voice was sprawled out high in her throat, and when she eventually stopped and stood in the middle of the room, she spent many minutes looking from the shelves to her fingers and back again. How many books had she touched? How many had she felt?